Dr. Mike, give me your full name and then what is your actual, I don't even know how to word your doctorate or what is it?
Dr. Jonathan Mike. I'm a sports performance coach, now entrepreneur. I taught in the university system for like 8 years. Taught undergrad and graduate studies in exercise and sports science. So the first, after my PhD at University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, I was at Lindenwood University for 2 years.
Lindenwood in St. Louis?
Yeah, west side of St. Louis.
Oh, okay.
I know, yeah. I was there for 2 years and taught undergrad, grad courses and did a bunch of research with students, a lot of hands-on stuff. And then I was at Southern Mississippi for like a year, and then I've been out here at Phoenix. I taught at GCU for like 5 years, and mainly undergrad because there's no graduate program there. But now kind of transitioned over to the business and entrepreneur side. I speak at a shit ton of events throughout the year, post a lot of content, kind of got into the branding stuff about 3-4 years ago. And it's been a freaking wild ride. Always learning, always adapting, always innovating, and striving for personal excellence.
So help me out then real quick. How did you end up in Arizona?
I was actually at my second job at Southern Mississippi, and it's like I hated it. I was not in a very good place, like mentally or even like emotionally. I mean, I'm grateful that I had a job, but I was still traveling and speaking, and my family lived in Southern California, so I actually wanted to be closer to them. And because of cost of living, of course, some of my friends that moved out here that actually met in St. Louis when I was there, they're like, John, like you gotta come out. You'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. So basically,
But you're originally from California?
No, I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, they just moved out to California.
Yeah, years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. My parents actually live in Louisville, and then my two close aunts live in Southern California.
Cool.
So yeah.
So you're 17, 18 years old. Why'd you decide to get into the fitness education system?
My story is actually pretty similar to other individuals, but I remember I started lifting when I was a senior in high school, which was like in 1999. Okay. So a year prior, like in 98, like I'm sitting at home. I was like maybe junior going into senior in high school. I turned on the TV, and at the time it was like WWF, right? And they've been WWE for like, over 20 years. But like I saw that on TV, and in the background it said like Louisville, Kentucky. And so they were doing a live show there. And I'm like, you're looking at all these guys
jacked.
And they're just fucking jacked to the gills, right? I mean, they're super athletic, like they're jacked and tan and swole.
99 was Triple H?
Yeah, Triple H, The Rock, Stone Cold, Undertaker, like all these, legendary dudes. So that kind of got me into, like, I knew I was going into college and I wanted to kind of get in better shape. So like the high school that I went to, most people don't know this, I actually went to the same high school that my mom taught at.
Oh, wow.
So like my last name was Mike, so like you can kind of see like how that would,
a little weird.
Really, yeah, a little weird. I mean, if your last name was like Smith, like probably nobody would really care that much. But so there was another teacher who was across the hall, and he was teaching like weightlifting at the time. So I hooked up with him, and he's kind of started showing me like all like the beginning stuff, and then I went into college. And then started continuing to really train. This is before I really kind of declared like, the overall major. But it just hit me, so seeing the physiques, with the WWE superstars at that time, and even, really now, that kind of really influenced me to increase a better, physical stature and, confidence and all this other stuff that you gain from doing that, the disciplinary types of, components with it.
Yeah.
So, come this next summer, 2024, it'll be 25 years since I've been training.
Damn.
Yep, and competing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quarter of a century.
That's right, man. A lot of reps.
A lot of reps in there. Okay, so let me tell you. So the reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast, or I just wanted to have a conversation with you, is a lot of people do know we started the Winter Warrior, right, which is like our charity.
Right.
So there's this guy named Mitch Winters. He was a Marine veteran. He was a Mace police officer. He was only 22 years old.
Wow.
Took his own life. I mean, and the guy looked like Captain America. So now you've got to be 6'3", lean, tall, fit, Marine. Looks like a WWF star.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So anyhow, obviously there was some mental issues going on there that were underneath the surface. So we created the Winter Warrior, and that was what we actually have our 3rd annual one coming up, not too far away now. But in that process of doing all that, from that stemmed, I created a nootropic product, the Ready. I believe you've.
Yeah, I take it all the time.
It's the shit.
I love it. Every day I take it.
So it's right. So it's like it's for mental performance, right? So then the next extension of that is I wanted to create a toolkit. They're like, what are all of the habits that keep people from getting into depression, anxiety, suicidal thought, that negative spiral loop, right? So I really spent some time doing genuine academic research. Like, what are these things? Now, to be frank, there are like an infinite number of them, that habits that you can do that will help like stave off those feelings, right? And mostly from disciplinary action.
Sure.
Right? And so we came up with 9 of them. And for each one of those habits, I want to have somebody on the podcast to like talk to about that thing and what it can do for mental performance. I really like the word mental performance better because it's like, it's just kind of like anything is, I think of the mind a little bit also like your physical body, like training it to become stronger, more resilient, be able to do more reps, be able to do it a little harder, you know, kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's just like with fitness is it's like, yeah, you're working out and staying in shape to shave off disease. That's like one side, right? Illness. But the other side is to actually get better and stronger over time. So same thing with your mind. So one of them is just exercise. And what we say is 30 minutes of exercise every single day, right? So on a light day, that could be a 30-minute walk.
Right.
It could also be an hour and a half long, tough weight training session, right? So why don't you, from your academic point of view, I would genuinely like to hear, what do you think the correlation is of like rigorous daily activity and mental health?
Oh, there's a tremendous amount of like a correlation. I mean, it's extremely high. I mean, you look at a lot of the position statements, even from like American College of Sports and Medicine, back like in the 90s and even early 2000s, it was, for a long period of time, it was, 30 minutes a day of exercise, physical activity, most of the days of the week.
Okay.
And I think a while back, they may have increased it to like an hour, right? Which I agree with. Okay.
Yes. When I say half an hour, I mean, it's like, that's the minimum.
Yeah. And I think, somebody could certainly make an argument for, or you were at 30 minutes, now you're an hour. Well, somebody can make the argument of, well, if someone's not doing 30 minutes, why would they even do an hour? I don't really look at it that way. I'm like, okay, if you got 30 minutes, great. If you get an hour, even better.
Yeah.
Like, I don't look at it as like one's good, like one's bad. But there's certainly a large correlation between exercise and decreased risk of like depression, mental performance, cognitive performance. For many, many years, that type of research was done mainly like in endurance athletes. Mainly because like if you look at...
that's right. When I looked, a lot of it was on marathon runners.
Yeah, because if you look at like historically, like sport nutrition, for example, it's still relatively new. Like the first true sports nutrition research came out of really like the late 1980s. And with researchers in like University of Texas.
Okay.
And
for like their college football athletes?
Yeah, but it was more like, glycogen replenishment, glycogen depletion.
Got it.
And mainly like in endurance performers. And so over the years, like, as things advance through tech and through advances of, exercise, that really transitioned more into like whether different types of sports, different types of like athletes, anaerobic types of athletes. So yeah, there's no doubt the large benefits of exercise and cognitive performance, decreased risk of depression, decreased risk of cardiovascular disease. And it's funny because like as a culture and like government entities spend billions and billions of dollars on like research and grants for cardiovascular disease, blood pressure, like diabetes, for example.
Tons
I mean, it's insane, like the numbers. But yet, when you actually look at the numbers, in 2021 or 2022, The U.S. spent about $4.2 trillion on healthcare alone.
Yeah.
70 to 80% of the FDA's budget goes to chronic disease, of which I may add, most of that chronic disease is almost nearly 100% preventable, or the vast majority of it is actually preventable.
Yeah.
1 in 4 kids are now obese. The leading cause of death is still cardiovascular disease among, all ethnic groups.
Yeah.
So it's just
Amongst women too?
yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, breast cancer is certainly up there, obviously,
there,
with
yeah,
women.
yeah.
Yeah. But we spend all these billions and billions of dollars on healthcare. I mean, are we really better off? And I'm not saying like, well, just don't exercise. Like, that's
Yeah, that's not
bullshit. But the large correlation between exercise and decreased risk of, disease and
All-cause
disability, all-cause
mortality.
mortality, like it's undoubtedly there.
Yeah. So we know that like that exercise every day, right, is incredibly important. So what I always sit back and wonder is we know that it helps you live longer, decreases that overall Medicare cost across the U.S., increases mental performance, right? Mm-hmm. How is there not, I feel like we always try to, let's make campaigns against smoking, which isn't bad. That's great, cool. But couldn't we spend more time like advocating for doing something rather than trying to negate something?
Absolutely.
I feel like that is where, or maybe I just don't know the system yet well enough, but you're talking about all these like medical grants that we give for research and stuff. And it's like, couldn't we just get kids to work out really hard every day, like in school? And
Well, yeah,
stuff?
well, you and I had that, like when we were in school. I mean, it's like elementary, middle, high school. There's physical education courses where it's 30 minutes or an hour. They took this shit away like years ago.
They did?
Oh, yeah. Even like when I was in high school, when I first started high school, there was like, it was called a tech lab. You go in, learn how to like build stuff with, wood and tools,
Yeah.
Fly, airplane, these simulators, type of thing. Like we actually like did that in high school. And even before that, like many high schools in my city, they had like, oil changing, like body shop, and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
So they ended up taking that out like, years ago. This is, 20, years ago or so.
Yeah.
And they just replace it with these just unnecessary, programs that don't allow people to like gain higher level obtainable skills for later
Yeah,
on
see,
in
I
life.
remember there being both. It's like, I do remember like a shop class and stuff.
Yeah.
But also I remember like a basket weaving class.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I mean,
Home ec or whatever.
It was just like, what are we doing here? What the fuck is going on? Okay, let me take a step back real quick and go back the other way around. We know there's a correlation between mental health and exercise, right? This is the part, give me your best answer about this. Is that just a neurochemical change? So over time, exercising, changing the amount of oxytocin, dopamine, norepinephrine, whatever. Or is it more of like a actual mental thing when we say like you have like goals and aspirations and you're achieving something? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So is it more of kind of like a mental thought process, or is it literally, no, we're changing the chemicals in your brain?
It's both, actually.
Oh, okay.
It's physiological and even mental or like psychological. So there's tons of physiological changes that happen just over basic exercise. Like, in fact, if you look at it from people that have like type 2 diabetes.
Got it.
Like 1 or 2 exercise sessions. So like if somebody goes and does 30 minutes or an hour's worth of like moderate intense exercise, you will see decreases in blood glucose sensitivity, especially like insulin sensitivity. Especially when you incorporate like resistance training exercise, you will get increases in glucose sensitivity up to 48 hours just from one exercise session alone. Yeah. This has been documented. Like, I know American College of Sports Medicine had position statements on this and for their type 2 diabetes. And they update it like every maybe 5 to 10 years or something like that. But really like one bout of exercise, physiologically, there's a whole host of changes that occur. Everything from like a neuromuscular level, to physiologic, increases in healthy, like, blood markers, the increases in, like, if you're doing strength training, like motor unit recruitment, increases in strength and muscle hypertrophy. Of course, a lot of the bigger, long-lasting stuff you know, in terms of physique development, you know, comes after doing like so many
Months or
weeks and reps
years.
and rips. Yeah. But there's a whole host of benefits that people get just from doing exercise like 2 or 3 days a week. So you get all the physiological benefits, but then you have to be able to sustain them like over time, right? So, you know, from a real world perspective, the vast majority of people really know what they have to do. Like, you have to be in a caloric deficit, you need to do resistance training, and you need to change eating patterns, and it's lifestyle and behavioral changes. Like, the vast majority of people like already know this. So you get the physiological changes, but then over here on the other side is like the mental side or the psychological
the
side.
psychological
And this is always with, you know, building habits. And, you know, you kind of mentioned this earlier about, you know, your story about the individual who, like, you know, took his own life. And I think where we are now, like, you know, economically, you know, politically, and this is more for men, but I think people just don't have a purpose. People lack purpose in life. You know, when you lack purpose, you don't have a sense of either belonging or identity, and don't know what you want to contribute to the world and to society, and create fulfillment and meaning for yourself, your friends and family, or to organization or to society, or, you know, company or whatever it is. So there's certainly been massive increases in overall lack of purpose, and that could transition into you know, working out, of course, you know, and the cognitive performance benefits with that. So it's not just, it's multifactorial.
So why is it so crazy to think, like, I could just imagine, right? You go to your doctor, you're a little overweight, you've got some hypertension, you've got some, you know what I mean, some bad markers on the sheet from the blood panel, right? That they could prescribe a personal trainer twice a week, right, at some gym, and your insurance covers 30% of the cost, or 80% of the cost. I don't know anything about fucking insurance. I hate it. But I think you get what I'm saying here. They could prescribe a personal trainer to help you exercise and get to where you need to be. Is it pharmaceutical companies and like their lobbyists? Is it just that, like, that's too weird and different? Like, what keeps us from doing this thing that just seems so simple to me?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I mean, now you're kind of getting into, like, you know, why don't doctors like prescribe or refer out to, you know, trainers?
Dietitian.
I mean, and I know a lot of them do. Especially at the collegiate level, you know, there's registered dietitians, you know, sports nutrition individuals. But why don't, like, medical doctors, hey, we have, you know, Mr. X here, we're going to prescribe you, here's a referral to a really good trainer, et cetera, et cetera. The reason is there's a lot of reasons, but someone's going to be losing like millions and billions of dollars. You know, the health insurance companies are going to lose, you know, money, but then you're getting into like the licensing part. You know, do you want, you know, the government and all that stuff to kind of intervene in your ability to, you know, exercise, or put limits or restrictions or restraints on how much, you know, something costs in terms of your trainers or your sessions or whatever that is, you know, so then you can certainly make an argument into like autonomy and, you know, freedom and all that stuff. But yeah, that's like, why don't we do that?
But I imagine it's kind of like, so I think about insurance companies, right? And so it's what they, first of all, you have to have insurance, right? Well, actually, depending on which one it is. But, you know, it's like they're government subsidized anyway. So saying, like, you know, they would lose money is, it's like, well, we're in charge of where the money goes. They get paid by the federal government, right? So in multiple different places. So it seems like we could just, you would have free market personal trainers in the local area, and you can go and pick from one of these 30 different trainers or gyms or whatever, and the insurance covers 50% of your costs. Maybe I am looking at it wrong, but I would think that that would save insurance companies money, because if you look at somebody who has worked out and eats healthy and stuff like that, they're less of a burden on the U.S. economy.
Right, but you often pay higher premiums. You know? So that's a lot of it as well, right?
Those sick people pay the premiums, big premiums.
Yeah.
God.
And then it's like a lot, depending on what company that you have and what your policy is, like you may end up, having a lower, higher deductible, like if you're healthy. It's like, you go to fast food. I was, now like there was an article in the New York Post like a week or two ago. Now like, Happy Meals at McDonald's is going to be like $18. $17, $18 for a Happy Meal, like some burgers and fries. That's not even like real food, and it's just, it's insane to me. Like all this money that we spend like on healthcare, chronic disease, like think of if all those billions of dollars actually went to solving like the real problem, and ultimately it's like, well, do they even really want to solve the real problem? So.
No, not really, because having the problem is what creates the demand for certain things.
Right.
So, okay, all right. Well, then we go down a really bad political path over that way, but sure. It still just seems to me like a good doctor, right, would, let's say you can't prescribe it through insurance, but would tell someone the very first thing you need to do is be doing resistance training, increase your leafy greens and protein consumption. I remember like my dad, he was up in age, but from age 80 to 83, he died at 83, he had lost a lot of muscle, right? And that comes from just you're a little older, you don't move as much, didn't want to eat as much, whatever. And I remember thinking like, if they would have just got him, like I would every day, not every day, every other day, I would go out and see him and I would take him for a walk. Because otherwise he would just sit in a chair and watch TV.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And you could see how his muscle mass had shrunk so much that it also like falling down became a very serious situation for him. As were just a light amount of like rehabilitation work, eating a little bit more could have prevented and could have saved him another 2 or 3 years of life. I don't know. It just was like, why is nobody talking to him about this?
Well, because maybe they either go to the wrong people or go to the wrong doctors. The vast majority, and don't get me wrong, like there's really great medical doctors out there. A lot of them don't get the credit that they really deserve, and there's a lot of them that specialize in whatever. But like the overall general practitioner, MDs, like they barely take about 3 weeks of nutrition, like in their entire medical program. They're trained to like prescribe like medications. Are there doctors out there that say, hey, listen, or maybe in the private practice that say, listen, like here's what you really need to do. Here's where you are. Here's what you need to do, and here's where you really need to be in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year, or whatever it is. And then they go over their blood work. They say, hey, like you could literally like die just by doing this. Like here's the problem. Like here's the actual like real world solutions. And like I think whether it's those types of individuals, like you mentioned, like older adults, I mean, it's very common. Like most older adults experience sarcopenia, age-related muscle loss.
Yeah.
When people make these statements of, well, I'm the same weight now as when I was, like in high school. Well, okay, you may be the same overall total body weight, but you've lost skeletal muscle mass, and you've gained body composition in place of that. So I argue heavily, and I've close friends in the industry that they spend all their time like working with older adults. With strength training, dude, skeletal muscle like is the most important tissue that you can have like physiologically. Like nothing comes close. The more lean body mass that you have, like the stronger you are, the healthier you are. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And there's no like denying that. This is like true actual scientific peer review like research. Like this is not like an opinion, from like social media or something like that. But yeah, resistance training is by far the most important thing you could do, and it's really the closest thing to the fountain of youth that really anybody's ever really going to get to.
I remember that was a couple things that I read about is like if you were to take all the different medications that there's a lot of different things now people coming out with for like basically life extension medicine, right? Things that can like help you repair and live longer or whatever. And it's like none of them even really come close to resistance training.
That's right.
Which like can help skin elasticity over time, right? You read these things in there and it's like, and your cognitive mind. I remember my dad, again, he had Alzheimer's. And he was showing a correlation. There were two different things. If you eat a lot of high glycemic carbohydrates, that seems to increase your risk for Alzheimer's. And then also, rigorous physical activity seems to decrease it quite a bit.
Yeah, it comes down to a term that a lot of people use called like neuroplasticity, which is basically how your brain kind of changes good or for the bad like over time. And like exercise is certainly one of the main factors that increase like neuroplasticity, but other things like, you know, writing, reading, it could be like listening to music, like it could be an exercise or that stimulus, or it could be like a new type of movement that you may not have done before. This could be something as simple as like a different angle or a different type of exercise variation, or like
something you gotta
walking
think
up
about
a hard hill, or like wearing a weight vest, like something like that, right? So the neuroplasticity comes and it increases, or it can decrease depending on what environment that you put yourself in terms of stimuli, reading, writing, like exercise. You know, so it's incredibly important, and so that's one of the large characteristics and hallmarks of individuals that have Alzheimer's is decreases in neuroplasticity of the brain.
Yeah, one of the ones I remember reading a lot about was learning a second language. It was like a great way to increase your neuroplasticity. Like just hits all the markers the right way. It's relatively difficult and you kind of slowly adapt to it. But okay, back to exercise real quick. You do a lot of speaking engagements. What is most of the stuff that the information you're giving out about? What is your kind of specialty or area of focus?
So my specialty, I've done a combination of lectures and hands-on stuff. I've lectured on, you know, sports supplements and recovery. Eccentric training is one that I've continued to evolve and adapt over time, because that was actually my PhD dissertation research was eccentric training and strength and power. So I've written about it, published about it, and now there's a whole host of stuff on the clinical factors with eccentric training as well. So it's a lot more like three-dimensional. So I've done that, sports supplements, recovery. Hands-on stuff has been everything from like fundamentals of like, you know, squat variations, box squat, overhead pressing, deadlifting, and a new one I actually developed this past year on power development and like rotational power. So that's something that like I did
That's sports performance.
Yeah, so because that's really more my, you know, background. It still is, but I did a full course. I actually recently got back from Asia. I did a full course in Singapore on power development, rotational power for athletic and general populations. And then I flew to Bangkok, Thailand to actually speak at another event and did 4 hands-on.
Is that transferable to all things rotational? So golf, baseball, tennis, anything where your power, like I guess boxing, things like where your, I guess just this core is turning?
Everything is rotation.
Yeah.
And even walking.
Well,
I mean, it seems like it's
yeah.
a very simple type of task, but it can be like pretty complicated for like a lot of individuals. You know, you mentioned earlier that, you know, older individuals, like they scoot their feet all the time. And that is a defense mechanism so your body doesn't basically have risk of falls and fractures. That's one of the reasons why they scoot their feet, because they lack stability, right? Where you lack stability is often correlated with like, you know, your inability to like decelerate, right? But even walking, you know, when you naturally like have an arm swing, it's involved in rotation. So pretty much all sports have some type of rotational, you know, aspect, some more than others, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you look at golf, I mean, it's certainly
all
thoracic, you know, rotation, like hip rotation, you know, thoracic hip mobility, you know, rotational power. Same thing with tennis, even same thing with, you know, soccer, you know, basketball, volleyball, those types of things. There are certainly like other sports that don't really require a whole lot, you know, with that as well. So yeah, I kind of got into that, and then now we're kind of going to take it to the next level and create like an in-person course and do some cool things this next year with it.
So you're traveling all over the world for these lectures that you
Yeah, mainly like I've been speaking for 10 years. So I started in like June of 2013. And at the end of this year, it will be about 85 talks that I've given. My goal was 50. And now I'm at 85.
Yeah.
And some of those obviously are repeats because, you know, different events, I kind of do some of this, you know, similar talks, but every year, every 2 years, like I adapt it a little bit, you know, update it, come up with some new material and kind of try to advance it as much as possible. But yeah, it's mainly been in the States. And then I was in Singapore and I was in Bangkok, Thailand. But then next year looking to go over, hopefully to the Middle East a little bit. So,
Really?
yeah.
Are they asking? Is this like the place that's kind of growing and bubbling?
Yeah,
out
I
there?
was supposed to go over to like Dubai this month for a big event, but it just didn't work out in terms of timing. But you know, next year, because there's all kinds of events, you know, over there. So the international is very yeah, lucrative, but it's just like it's a different world. You know, there's a lot of, I mean, yeah, there's hands-on stuff, but it's just different levels. You know, I've been wanting to kind of get in the international scene, you know, more, especially like in person. Like I've done some virtual stuff. You know, Toronto, that was in person at like CanFit Pro this past August. That was a great event. And then a lot of international like virtuals, especially like during COVID, like where nobody could go anywhere. You know, people were doing like all the virtual thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, your speeches and stuff like that were toast during 2020.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I mean, like it's funny because like in 2020, like there was like nothing. In 21, I had I think 6 or 7. 2022, I spoke at 16 talks total. I think 8 organizations, and this year has been 25 total talks and like 8, 9, you know, organizations. So, and some of those obviously were international, but it's a lot, man. Plus doing content, you know, and trying to, you know, get on the YouTube scene here pretty soon. Like it's a lot, but it's a lot of fun, and you know, especially like now with the entrepreneur stuff, like it's a shit ton to learn. It's a huge learning curve, and all the stuff that, you know, you don't learn at school.
You do not learn at all in school.
That's right.
That is so fucking true.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there was a piece, again, I'm going to go back to our program. It's called the 91.9. It's the Personal Excellence Program. So one of those, like I said at the beginning, is that 30 minutes of activity every single day. What would you say if you were to give some piece of advice for that to the general public, but they're not working out right now? What would you tell them? It's like, hey, I got to go move 30 minutes every day. What do I do?
Just go walk, you know, a faster, brisk walk. You know, you can put some, you know, some people like to wear like ankle, you know, weights or whatever. I mean, if that's what you like, fine, but I would prefer that you just walk a little bit faster, a faster pace. You know, go up and down some hills, you know, do some, you know, hip flexion stuff, or some like find like a bench at a park and do like some, you know, slow step ups, or, you know, some inverted rows on a, you know, jungle gym at a park or something like that, right? I mean, I think, you know,
Keep it easy.
Keep it easy and simple. Like one of the biggest problems that we have in this industry is like taking shit that's everyone knows it's simple and purposely and intentionally making it complicated so people can just intentionally sell a bunch of shit
that they don't really need.
They don't really need. Yeah. You know, like it is just like ubiquitous. I mean, it's just becoming more and more pervasive, like just over the last couple of years alone. People that are making all these like ridiculous claims and the bold claims they have no evidence for, you know, so it's like keep things
How
very
much time
simple.
do you spend calling people like that out? Do you do it?
Enough. I've done it enough, but I don't spend like all of my time like on social posting stuff about like other people's bullshit. But when I see it, when I know it's wrong, like I'll call it out.
You'll comment on it?
I'll comment on it or like post it on my story. Like I did this the other day. There was like a Instagram reel where it's like, you know, ice baths are the best thing, like, you know, to burn fat. I'm like,
God, this one is dumbest. Yeah, this is a new one.
This is the dumbest shit.
Yeah.
Like I can think of that's anything beyond my capability of like understanding.
Yeah.
Like ice baths do not burn fat. You know what does? It's a caloric deficit, higher protein diets, and like fucking resistance training.
Yeah.
Like this is what it is. And this is just one of those things. It's like everybody.
But it's like that thing that there's a kernel in there, right? They're like, okay, if you get really cold, your body has to, you know, burn a couple more calories to raise the core temperature. 10 calories?
Yeah.
11 calories?
Yeah, it's nothing.
You know what? It's negligible.
Right.
But the thing is, there is a kernel of truth in there. So then how can we extrapolate this and then now sell you an ice bath? And what's funny is, God, I know what you mean. It's funny you said the ice bath one. I'm an ice bath guy.
Okay.
I love them. I really do love it.
Okay.
But I totally know when I do it that it's like meditation for me, right? This doesn't make me stronger. This isn't burning body fat. This isn't like, it's just a thing I like to do that really does. I feel like it supercharges.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like that, I'm not against an ice bath or like a cold plunge. I'm not against that at all. Like, you know, even colder showers. Like I've done cold plunge and like colder showers, and I've done like an ice bath. I'm not against any of those. What I am against, you know, ethically and, you know, morally and physiologically is people making up a bunch of stupid shit, like just to sound smart.
Yeah.
When people that actually really know what's up are just they're gonna call them out on it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I'm really against.
I got you.
And it's like people just buy into this stuff like it's like nobody's business.
They really do.
It's insane to me. You know?
But also, we say this all the time, is like, because fitness and nutrition is from afar very complicated, meaning that there are essentially an infinite number of things to do, right? So if you don't know anything, there's just so many to do,
Correct.
right? Actually, an infinite number amount, because you could just make up new shit every single day. So that makes it very complicated. Sometimes people get paralysis by analysis, and then they don't know, well, should I do this workout or this one? I don't know what to do. Should I not eat this? Then they just end up saying fuck it and not
Exactly.
working out and like eating a chicken.
Oh yeah, but it's common, whether it's exercise, it could be like business, it could be starting like a podcast, you know, account or whatever it is. But I mean, paralysis by analysis is so incredibly rampant. It's like they have so much information coming to them, like they have no idea what to do. So they either do nothing because of, you know, fear, anxiety, or what, you know, Johnny Pants 69 is going to say like on fucking, you know, social media, or fear of what their, you know, family member or their friend are going to say or whatever it is. So they end up hindering their own progress, you know, and they're operating out of state, like just out of fear. And just dive in and you will figure it out as you go along. You will gain new habits, you will gain new skill sets, and you will be a higher operator.
Yeah. So I'm not actually trying to like pitch my program that much, but because it's exactly what we're talking about. So underneath health, right, there's an infinite number of things you can do to be healthier. I, for like each category, and one category is health, wanted to pick 3 things. So if you had to limit it, right, you're just limited to picking 3 things. What I chose was 30 minutes of activity every day, eating your body weight in protein, grams of protein.
Yeah.
Number 3, having a set bedtime and nightly routine.
Yep.
So, you know, rather than like, I'm going to set my alarm clock for 6 and do this thing in the morning. No, I'm going to set my alarm at 8 p.m. That means go to bed, do a little whatever, you know, a meditation, brush your teeth, whatever ritual before you go to bed.
I've done that. You just reverse engineer.
Exactly. I genuinely believe like those 3 things, if I had to pick anything, would be like, okay, let's start there. And that'll probably get you 80% of all the results: movement, nutrition, recovery.
But they're simple and effective tactics and strategies that you stick to, and you do it every day. And all of a sudden, like, oh, a week goes by, a month goes by, 3 months, 6 months, and guess what? Like, now it comes automatic. You don't have to think about it anymore.
Exactly.
Right. And then like once you gain those habits, then add on something new. And before you know it, a year goes by and you've gained all these other new habits and strategies that you can implement that in your own life, your training, and your business to, you know, gain higher levels of leadership and, you know, employee, you know, customer
Whatever the thing is
service.
that you want.
All that shit. But it's like people think they have to do like the complicated shit. And it's like, sorry, everybody, like that's not the case.
No.
Right? Because they're looking for all
It's
this
most
like,
of the time the wrong answer.
it is. It's most of the time the wrong, it's a perfect way to say it actually. It's like the simple and effective stuff. And even like when I'm coaching people, whether it's on a lift, and I've told this to individuals when I'm, you know, at seminars coaching lifts and stuff, and even like online and you know, in person, you may see something that somebody is doing like 10 things wrong. And the vast majority of people want to correct all 10 at one time. And who you're working with is getting information, you know, overload. And they don't know how to process anything. So just pick like 2 or 3 things. Because you know what happens? The vast majority of the time, all those other ones that are incorrect end up self-correcting as you go through and gain more experience and habits with the repetitions and gain more confidence.
I remember this. I had an injury and I've just now started working with a trainer again, right? There were some just imbalances, right? And we're working on those. We're doing like corrective mobility exercises at the beginning of the workout. But when we get into the strength portion of the workout, so let's say like a squat, it's almost exactly what he said, which is funny as what you said. He's like, you know, there's like 6 things that I'm doing wrong. But we're going to start with slowing your rep down to a 2-second negative and coming all the way through the motion, right? So not to, on my squat, not at a 90, but all the way like basically ass to grass, right? Well, then a lot of the other imbalances where I was like tilting my hip a little bit to the side, stopped because I slowed the movement down. So then I didn't have to stop and start thinking about like engaging my left butt cheek or whatever. All I had to do was actually just slow the negative down and then fire out, and all of a sudden that imbalance was corrected just by slowing it down.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because like when I teach like rotational power stuff, and even other movements, like the vast majority of people, and this is more for like a athletic sports performance, perspective. Not, I mean, it does apply to gen population, but we're so used to doing things like fast or explosive or in a like a normal resistance training type of tempo. But when you purposely like slow things down in terms of the tempo, like you find out all kinds of shit that you never really saw before.
Oh, yeah.
And so like your weaknesses get a little bit more
Tightnesses
exposed.
in places.
Your weaknesses become a little bit more exposed. And at the same time, like if you're training somebody who's more highly trained, like say like, an experienced power lifter, have them do like some max effort stuff. Because as I said before, in many talks I've given, like everything looks awesome at like 135. Or like 220, all right? Or like 225.
Yeah.
But as the weight goes up,
You see where.
you see where weaknesses become more exposed, and then you can use those to work into your program, right? So I mean, you can look at it in certainly both ways and both perspectives.
And it totally makes sense. Increase the intensity and you can see where things break down. I mean, that's like for almost anything. Like if you wanted to, find the weaknesses in a structure, right? You got to shake it.
Yeah.
You got to put in the higher intensity.
Yeah,
you do
but
it, you
if
can
you're
see
like
those.
doing like a golf swing, which is very fast and very dynamic, if you did the same motion and use like a resistance band like tied to a rack and you're doing the same motion as a golf swing, but you're doing it really slow,
Yeah.
then you can really see like where you may be weak at. If you're taking something that's fast and you're purposely making it slower and controlled,
Yep.
so you can actually work both ends of the spectrum.
That's awesome. Yeah. Dr. Mike, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, man. It was
Dude,
awesome.
How long were we? Oh, fuck yeah.
That was awesome.
That's fucking
That was really fucking good, dude.
Yeah, that
I
was
really
awesome.
like that.
I did say that again. Yeah. No, just leave it how it is, and then just put on there, I'm an idiot. I had you on the podcast. Just like the other thing.